안녕하세요.
Welcome to this presentation on the import of composite products starting from the 21st of April 2021. We are a law firm based in Paris. Our name is Product Law Firm. We are specialized in the regulations and also litigation of food products in particular, and also non-food products in general. We will discuss the new regulation applicable from the 21st of April 2021 for the importation of composite products from third countries into the EU. Firstly, we will discuss what is a composite product. Secondly, we will look at a brief overview of the new regulations which will be applicable. We will also make a practical application to the theory in several case studies. Fourthly, we will take a look at where to find the information. And finally, we will answer questions sent by participants. First question, which you should always ask yourself in order to find out whether what we will see is applicable or not to your product. What is a composite product? So composite products are defined under EU regulations, more specifically in a decision of 2007. It is a foodstuff containing both processed animal products on the one hand, and products of plant origin on the other, including where the processing of the primary product is an integral part of the production of the final product. So what you really need to keep in mind is that in order to find out whether your product is a composite product or not, you should look at the ingredients contained in your final product, decide whether the animal products contained in your final products are processed or not, because this is the key element of this definition. The animal product, the product of animal origin, has to be a processed product. And also composite products also include products of plant origin. So what do we mean by processed? What we mean is that the product of animal origin must have undergone a significant modification compared to its initial state during the manufacturing of the composite product. So for instance, if we look at ham is a product of animal origin, and when the ham has been smoked, this is a process applied to the product, and therefore smoked ham is a processed product of animal origin. As you can see below this slide, we have put some examples of products that can be classified into the category of composite products. So if you look, for instance, at ice cream contains, it can contain fruit, so that would be a product of plant origin, and also it contains dairy products. So milk, which has undergone a process and has become a dairy product. The European Commission has published a guide which provides some examples of some products which which can be classified as composite products or not. So if we take a look at this first example, we have a can of tuna steak in sunflower oil. So if we look at the product information, we see that it includes tuna, sunflower oil, and salt. So tuna is a product of animal origin. Sunflower oil is a product of plant origin. And finally, we have salt. So the tuna has not been processed, and therefore this can of tuna steak will not fall into the category of composite products. if we now turn to the second example, so we have an Indian product which is called the Paneer Bhurji roll. We see that it is frozen. It is filled with vegetables and a type of fresh cheese, which is similar to cottage cheese, and that the final product has not been cooked. So it includes products both of animal and of plant origin, and the product of animal origin, so in this case it would be the cheese, is basically milk which has undergone a process. Therefore, the Paneer Bhurji roll is a composite product, and starting from the 21st of April 2021, there will be a modification of the current applicable rules in order to find out whether we can import this Indian product into the EU. So let's now turn to the new regulations. So in this slide, we have put the main regulations that are applicable to the import of composite products into the EU. And in orange, you can see the new regulations which will apply. This is not an exhaustive list of regulations because, as you will find out, the regulations applicable to the import of composite products is quite dense. So we have only summarized the main pieces of legislation that you would need to look at. Firstly, we have a regulations which is currently applicable, which states that a product of animal origin which is contained in the composite products must come from an authorized third country and an authorized establishment. This rule will apply to all composite products from third countries being imported into the EU. There is also a decision which is important because it defines the requirements applicable to the processed product of animal origin, and which states that processed product of animal origin must comply with residues of chemical substances rules. So keep that in mind, and we will also provide some examples later in the presentation. Thirdly, we have a new regulation this time, which defines the animal health requirements to be met by composite products. And those composite products in this regulation are classified into 3 categories. So we will also further explain this new classification of products. Fourthly, we have a regulation which sets out the rules for official food controls in the EU. So this regulation in general applies to all types of products, not just composite products. And it has been supplemented with the 5th regulation on this slide. This regulation provides additional requirements for certain composite products, which are identified in the regulation by a customs code. And also this regulation provides for a requirement to accompany the composite products with either an official certificate or a private attestation for certain composite products. So also we will further classify which documents need to be provided to import those products. And finally, we have a regulation which has been actually published very recently at the beginning of the year. And this is the regulation that provides all the models of animal health and official certificates and attestations to be provided. So we will take a look at those examples because it really helps you to understand what you need to fill in, what information you need to provide when you import your product into the EU. As you can see on this slide, there are different types of regulations, but we can say that there are three types of requirements. We have requirements applicable to the residues of chemical substances. We have requirements relating to the health, animal health in general into the EU. And finally, we have requirements which are applicable to the public health of citizens into the EU. So what changes from the 21st of April 2021? So this is really the three main differences that will apply and that you need to keep in mind. First change, from now on, composite products are no longer classified according to the percentage of the processed product of animal origin contained in the composite products. So it doesn't matter whether that ingredient is included in the product at a 1% level, 0.5, 20%. That doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the risk that the composite product, so the final product, poses to public and animal health into the EU. And the regulations that we have seen in the previous slides classify composite products in three categories according to the risk which is posed to public and animal health into the EU. So that's the first change. The second change is that from now on, the third country where the composite product is manufactured, is made, must be listed in a decision, which we have seen in the previous slides, for each of the products of animal origins which are processed. Basically, what that means is that the country where the product is manufactured must have an EU-approved residue monitoring plan. So we will see that things are not as difficult as it appears, because there is actually a list of countries in that decision, and we will provide examples to help you define whether your composite products follows that requirement. And finally, we have a third change. From now on, depending on the category of the composite product, you will have to provide either an official certificate, or alternatively, if you comply with the conditions, you will have to provide a private attestation, which is a more simplified document. So what are those three categories of composite products that we have discussed? So from now on, those are the three main categories in which you can classify your product. Firstly, you have non-shelf stable composite products. So products that need to be stocked or transported in controlled temperature conditions. Secondly, we have shelf-stable composite products that contain meat products. So by meat, we mean meat from animals and not fish. And finally, we have shelf-stable composite products that do not contain meat products. So for instance, that contain egg products or dairy products. So keep those three categories of products in mind, because this will basically allow us to decide whether we have to provide an official certificate or a private attestation. When deciding whether to import your composite product into the EU, and of course when deciding whether you can and you are authorized to import that product, there are a number of questions to be asked. We have made in this slide a summary of those questions, and we will provide examples further in the presentation. But of course, the first question to ask is my product a composite product? So we have explained before how to help you answer that question. The second question is, are all the processed products of animal origins covered in my country by an EU-approved residue monitoring plan? So are they listed in the decision 2011/163? Third question, does the processed product of animal origin come from an EU member state, or alternatively, does it come from a third country which is listed under a specific regulation? In other words, is the processed product of animal origin from an authorized third country? The fourth question is, does that ingredient, so the processed product of animal origin, does it come from an approved establishment? Again, we have lists of approved establishment by the EU. Then another question is, does the composite product need to be stored or transported under controlled temperature? Does the composite product contain meat products and not, does it contain fish? Does it contain chicken? Does it contain eggs? Those are questions that you need to ask yourselves. And finally, if the product contains egg or dairy products, has that ingredient, so the egg product or the dairy product, undergone risk mitigation treatment? So we will see further in the presentation what we mean by those risk mitigation treatments. But this is basically those are basically the main questions to ask yourselves. Thankfully, the EU and the European Commission in particular has provided a decision tree to non-EU countries which are authorized to export meat products, fishery products, dairy products, or egg products to the EU. Because since the regulation is quite dense and difficult to understand, this decision tree is a very helpful tool to help you decide whether you may import the product or not into the EU. So you can see on this slide that the three categories of conditions which I have described before are the chemical residues conditions, the public health conditions, and the animal health conditions. So this decision tree really is very much helpful in helping you understand the rules applicable to your product. So let's now turn to case studies, and let's put in application the rules that we have briefly discussed. So let's take a look at the first category of composite products, which is composite products which are stored or transported under controlled temperature and which contain fishery products. So on this slide, we have examples of list of ingredients of some of those products. And we can see if we take a look at the list of ingredients, for instance, on the first product, we have a rice dish which includes shrimps, which has been pre-cooked and quick frozen. So shrimps, oyster extract, shrimp powder, those are ingredients that fall under the category of animal products. The question, of course, will be, are those products processed? Well, that will be the key. We will take a look at all the questions, but those are the questions to be asked. We can see that all those products here need to be stored in a refrigerator, so that would fall under the category of controlled temperature products. Keep refrigerated, as you can see. So those are products that need to be stored under controlled temperature, and they contain fishery products. So we will now proceed step by step. So we will basically ask all the questions that we have seen before, and at the end of those questions, we should be able to state whether the product can be imported into the EU or not. So first question, now that we have seen that those products are indeed composite products, because they include processed products of animal origin and plant products at the same time, now we turn to the first question. Are all the processed products of animal origin contained in the final product covered in my country by an EU-approved residue monitoring plan? The answer is quite easy. Basically, we can just click on the link which we have provided. And by the way, throughout the presentation, we have provided links to all the regulations which we have cited. But if we take a look at this decision, we will find an annex and a list of countries. And we can see that for South Korea, products which are covered by this residue monitoring plan are only poultry and aquaculture. So since we are looking at a product including fishery products, we can see that yes, aquaculture products from South Korea are covered by an EU-approved residue monitoring plan. So therefore, the first question has a positive answer, and we can now turn to the second question. So now we need to ask ourselves whether the processed products of animal origin come from either EU member states or countries approved by the EU, basically in accordance with an implementation regulation. So do they come from authorized third countries? And do they come from authorized establishment? Again, we can make a search into the regulation which we have cited on this slide. So we take a look at this regulation, and we can see that in our case, the fishery products come from South Korea. So fishery products which come from South Korea can be exported to the EU because we have a list of third countries or regions thereof from which entry into the EU are permitted of fishery products. So South Korea is listed. However, we also need to make sure that the fishery products come from EU-approved establishment. So the list of authorized third countries is in one regulation, and the list of EU-approved establishments can be found on a website. And if we take a look at fishery products in this list, we can see that there are a number of approved establishments. So what you need to ask yourselves, you need to try to find the applicable establishment in this list. And if the supplier of fishery products is not approved by the EU, so is not in this list, then the composite product cannot be exported to the EU. So thirdly, let's assume that we have that the previous question has been answered positively. Then we can go on to the third question, and we need to wonder whether the composite product needs to be stored or transported under controlled temperature. So as you can see here, it's quite obvious. Yes, it needs to be stored or transported under controlled temperature, since as we have seen, it needs to be stored in a refrigerator. So those are the instructions provided on the package. So we turn quickly to the fourth question, which is my country allowed to import to the EU all the processed products of animal origin contained in the composite products? So keep in mind that composite products can include different categories of processed product of animal origin. It could contain eggs, egg products, dairy products, and also shrimp, processed shrimp. So each of the product of animal origin needs to be on this list. So here for fishery products, if we take a look at the list of third countries from which entry into the EU are permitted for fishery products, we can see that South Korea is listed. So therefore, again, we have a yes to our fourth question. So South Korea can export fishery products to the EU. So now that we know that we can export the product to the EU, that is all fine, but do we need to accompany the package, the composite product, with a certificate? So in this case, it must be accompanied by an animal health or official certificate signed by the competent authorities of the country exporting the composite product, and our composite product will be subject to control at the EU border. We have provided an example of animal certificate. So it's called Animal Health Certificate or Official Certificate in the regulation, but it's actually one single document. Until recently, the model of certificate hadn't been published yet, but now that we have had a chance to take a look at the document, we can say that yes, it is just one single document. Which contains two parts. So the first part has to be filled in by the operator, by the importer. So, you know, they have to fill in their address and describe basically what the container includes. And then there is a second part, which is the health certificate per se. And that certificate has to be filled in by the official veterinarian of the country of origin. The certificate certifies that the composite product complies with all the EU regulations, which we have seen before. And the model can be found by clicking on the link we have provided. And I would add that there is also a useful instructions by the EU on how to fill in the form, which can help you as well. So let's now turn to a second category of composite products. So this time the composite products still contain fishery products. However, they do not need to be stored or transported under controlled temperature. So in a way, they are more stable. So here we have two examples of a label, and in the list of ingredients, we can see that indeed the only category of a product of animal origin is our fishery products. So we have, for instance, tuna, cuttlefish, mussel, anchovy, pollock, shrimp, and those products are not do not need to be kept refrigerated under particular conditions. And also they are processed products. So we have instant noodles, and we have a shrimp flavored cracker. So those products are obviously processed. The product of animal origin is processed. So first question. So we again ask ourselves whether the processed products of animal origin are covered by an EU-approved residue monitoring plan. So we take a look at the decision, we take a look at the annex, and we can see that for aquaculture products, South Korea is covered by such a plan. And so therefore, we can turn to the second question. We wonder whether the processed products of animal origin come from either an EU member state or from countries approved by the EU. And also in this list, as we have seen before, for fish, South Korea can export such products. However, again, we need to check that the establishment in which the fishery product is manufactured is on the list of EU accredited establishments. So if it is not the case, then unfortunately the composite product cannot be exported to the EU. But if it is the case, then we can turn to the next question, which is which are the storage and transport conditions of the product. So in this case, there are no conditions of controlled temperature. The answer is no. In the decision tree, that leads us to a fourth question. Does the composite product contain meat products? So, as I said, fish products are not considered meat products. So the answer is no. And now we have a fifth question. Is my country allowed to export meat or dairy products or fishery or egg products to the EU? So in this case, is my country allowed to export fishery products to the EU? We take a look at the regulation, and that's the annex. We can see that South Korea is allowed to export fishery products to the EU. And therefore, now we can positively conclude that the composite product is eligible for entry into the EU. However, this time, we do not have to provide a certificate. This time, private attestation is enough. So such an attestation provides the public health information which is required by regulation number 2019/625, and also animal health information. And again, of course, the composite product will be subject to a control at the EU border. So we would just like to bring to your attention one point of focus. So if the composite product is on a pending list of low-risk products, then it will be subject to a control at destination rather than at the EU border. So at the date of this presentation, such a list has not yet been published. So you should bear in mind that the rules that we are seeing today will be supplemented by further clarifications by the EU. So they may evolve. So just keep that that point in mind. We have provided an example of the private attestation. By the way, this model of private attestation can be found in the same regulation as stated before. So it's still the regulation 2020/2235. So you can click on the link and you will find the model in Annex 5. So again, this attestation has to be provided during the control at the border. However, it is more simplified than the animal health certificate, the official certificate. It only has to be filled in and signed by the importer. So the importer, simply by signing this document, certifies that the third country which produces the composite product is included in a list for at least one of the following categories of products of animal origin. So we have meat products, dairy or colostrum products, fishery products, and finally egg products. So as you can see, it's a more simplified document. The document contains a declaration which relates to the risk mitigating treatments which dairy and egg products have to undergo. And it also contains the list of products of plant origin and of the products of processed animal origin, which are contained in the composite products. And this list has to be provided in decreasing order. So yes, it's a much more simplified document than the official certificate. Let's now turn to a third category of composite products. So this time, the products do not have to be stored or transported under controlled temperature, but they do not contain fishery products. They contain this time dairy and or egg products. So we have a creamy sauce for sushi, and we have chocolate. So if we identify the processed product of animal origins, we have the egg yolk, we have egg white, so those are obviously processed from an egg. And if we turn to the chocolate snack, we have skimmed milk powder, so that is processed milk again. We have a whole egg liquid, and finally we have processed skimmed powder. So if we look at the first question and try to identify whether all the processed products of animal origin contained in the final product are covered by an EU-approved residue monitoring plan. So if we take a look at the decision, we can see that for milk and eggs, actually, when those ingredients come from South Korea, those ingredients are not covered by an EU-approved residue monitoring plan. So what to do? We have to ask now whether the country from which we source those ingredients are covered, come either from an EU member state or come from another country which this time has an EU-approved residue monitoring plan. So if the answer is yes, we can move on to the next question. However, if the answer this time is no, the definite answer is the composite product cannot be exported to the EU. So let's assume that the answer is yes. Well, actually, let's assume that the answer is no. So we wonder whether my country has notified the source of supply to the European Commission, because this is a possibility offered by decision 2011-163. If the answer is no, then the declaration referred to under Article 2.1 of that decision may be notified to the EU. So let's clarify this, shall we? So if a third country that manufactures a composite product is not included in the list of specific ingredients of animal origin contained in the composite product in that decision, but wishes to source the ingredient from a member state or from another third country, then it has to notify such a request to the European Commission. So even though the country from which I'm sourcing the egg or milk product or the dairy product does not appear in the annex, all is not lost, because I can still notify to the European Commission that I have found a country which has an approved residue monitoring plan, and I can ask permission to source my ingredient from that country. So bear that in mind, because it's quite useful. So is my country included in the decision for this type of supply? So for South Korea, we can see that currently for milk and eggs, the answer is no. But we can see, for instance, that in Singapore, for milk, the answer is yes. So it would be possible to source the milk products from Singapore. But currently for South Korea, the composite product cannot be exported to the EU. Then we wonder whether the processed products of animal origin contained in the composite product come from an EU member state or from a third country approved by the EU, and from also an approved establishment. So we take a look at the list. We can see that South Korea is not on the list of third countries which are allowed to export dairy products to the EU. So the answer is composite products containing dairy products from South Korea cannot be exported to the EU. And if we make a search in another regulation, we can see that eggs and eggs products from South Korea seem to be allowed to be exported to the EU. However, that's not enough. We need to check that the egg products also come from an approved establishment, so an accredited establishment. So we take a look at the list by clicking on the link, and we can see that South Korea does not currently have any EU-approved establishment for eggs and egg products. So therefore, composite products which contain egg products from South Korea cannot be exported to the EU. We also take a look at the definition of the storage and transport temperature of the composite product. So in this case, no, the creamy sauce for sushi and the chocolate do not have to be stored or transported under controlled temperature. Do they contain meat products? No, the answer is no. We have only egg yolk, egg white, skim milk powder, whole egg liquid, processed skim powder. So those do not fall under the meat products category. We wonder whether my country is allowed to export meat or dairy products, or fishery or egg products again to the EU. So we have done this before. This fourth step is actually in the decision tree. So this is why we have repeated it on this slide. So just as a reminder, composite products containing dairy products from South Korea cannot be exported to the EU. And composite products containing egg products from South Korea can be exported to the EU only if South Korea has approved establishments and an EU-approved residue monitoring plan. So what documents would have to be provided? Let's assume that we have filled in all the conditions. Then in this case, for this category of products which contain egg products and dairy products, and which do not need to be stored or transported under controlled temperature, well, for this category of products, only a private attestation has to be provided, and the composite products will be subject to control at the EU border. So again, we remind you of that point of attention. So if the composite product is on the pending list of low-risk products, then it will be subject to control at destination. So in the country, for instance, in France or in Italy, rather than at the EU border. So this list of questions to be asked, of course, is not always very easy to answer, as you have seen. So we have now in this fourth part of the presentation put some useful websites and useful administrations to turn to when you have doubts about whether your products can be imported to the EU or not. So the first recommendation that we would make would be to call the Health Control of Composite Products Administration. So in France, we have an administration called the CIVEP. It is based at the Roissy airport. And the CIVEP can answer questions by email. So we have provided their email here. An exporter of composite products, when having doubts about whether to be able to export the products to France, can send an email and provide certain information, and then the CIVEP can clarify whether the composite products is allowed and also what documents need to be provided. So information such as the customs code of the product, the nature of the processed product of animal origin, the type of product that the composite product falls into, so controlled or uncontrolled temperature products, the composition, the intended use of the product, and the country of origin can be provided to the CIVEP. And also the models of certificates, so not just for composite products, but all types of products actually, can be found on the European Import-Export Declaration Platform, TRACES. In France, if an importer wants to know whether his product is a composite product, there are other administrations that may be contacted. We have the customs, French customs, number one. So we have provided their phone number. So it's completely possible to ask them for help. The CIVEP, we have already discussed how they may be contacted. And also, thirdly, it's possible to request, to make a request for binding tariff information on the Soprano platform and also by email. So again, we have provided all the contact information on this slide. There are also, thankfully, useful websites provided by the EU and by French customs, which can be helpful. So we have the import page of the European Commission, which contains useful information on importing products into the EU. We have an access to markets platform, which allows you to simulate the import of each product according to their country of origin and destination. And this platform allows you to find out all the applicable requirements for exports. There is the list of third countries and EU accredited establishments, all third countries for the export of products of animal origin to the EU. So this is the list that we have mentioned before in our examples. So you can find out which establishments and countries are authorized to export to the EU by sector. So again, you can see that the words that are underlined are actually links. So you can click on those different sources. There's the list of agreements between the EU and third countries, because such agreements are sometimes entered into and determine the existence of a preferential agreement or generalized preferential system on the rules of origin, customs unions, free trade agreements, etc. There is a database of tariff quotas. So this can help you find out what quota will apply to your import. There is the RITA base. So it's basically a catalog of EU and national regulations applicable to specific products. And finally, we have the IMPADON platform, which contains the sanitary regulations and conditions for the import of animals, of animal products, plants, and plant products. Finally, we have provided the links to a number of guidelines. So there is one guideline on the import of products of animal origin. So bear in mind, not just processed product of animal origin. A guideline on the conditions for the import control of composite products. A Q&A on the import of animal foodstuffs and veterinary border controls. So all these useful informations can be accessed by clicking on the links that we have provided. So finally, if we turn to the last part of our presentation, we have received a number of questions which we will now answer in the following slides. So first question, which is very important. It's all fine to know that a composite product is a product which contains processed ingredients of animal origin, but how can I be sure that my ingredient is a processed ingredient of animal origin? So if you look at collagen of sea origin, basically it's quite easy. We have, if we look at regulation number 853/2004, we have a number of definitions of what a dairy product is, what processed means, what a composite product is. So if you look at collagen of sea origin, the answer is yes, because collagen from fish products fall under that category. If we look at seaweed, the answer is no. Seaweed is a plant product, so it's not a processed ingredient of animal origin. Lactoserum, the answer is yes. We look at Annex 1, Part 16 of Regulation 1308/2013. So lactoserum comes from milk, so milk has undergone a process. Same answer with lactose. For sodium caseinate, obviously the answer is not as easy to find, but by looking at the European Customs Code, we can see that actually it falls under the category of albuminoid materials, and therefore is not considered as a processed product of animal origin. And finally, we have a sixth category, which is animal fats such as lard and bovine tallow. So this comes from beef and from a number of meats, and so therefore the answer is yes. By looking at the annex in the already quoted regulation, we can see that those products fall under the category of processed ingredients of animal origin. So sometimes the answer is easy, sometimes it can be a bit more complicated, particularly in the example of sodium casseinates. But by looking at other regulations, such as the European Customs Code, one can find the answer. We have now a second question regarding regulation number 2019/625. Does this regulation apply when the processed product of animal origin is present in negligible quantity? Well, here the answer is yes, because as we have seen before at the beginning of our presentation, from now on, so from the 21st of April 2021, there is no minimal threshold. So it doesn't matter if my ingredient of animal origin is present in the product at a 1% level, 0.1% level, even 0.01% level. What matters is the risk that the EU considers that the ingredient poses to public and animal health, regardless of the percentage of the ingredient. So the rules are about to change. So the percentage of the ingredient is no longer a condition. It doesn't matter. Is it necessary to provide an official certificate or a private attestation for each container? So thankfully, we have now published models for the official certificate and the private attestation. And we can answer this question quite easily. Each certificate or attestation relates to a shipment of the same composite product. It may therefore cover several containers. So see, if we take a look at the model, we have a square to be filled in, so container number, seal number, and we can see that all the numbers applicable to the containers in which my product is present can be filled in. So for instance, if I send one category of composite products, so let's say chocolate, in 3 different containers, then only one certificate or attestation is required. I can just fill in the different numbers in one single form. So still regarding this, this regulation, we have a question asked by a participant who says, this regulation is applicable from the 21st of April 2021, but at what level? Is it at the time of the entry summary declaration? Is it at the time of the customs control, or is it according to the date of production? Actually, what you need to bear in mind in respect of this specific regulation is that this regulation, starting from the 21st of April 2021, is applicable. So from that date, the conditions under which the composite product may enter into the EU are defined under this regulation. So it doesn't matter whether I am at the time of the entry summary declaration or the time of the customs control. What matters is that from that date, in order to find out whether my composite product can enter into the EU, I need to take a look at this regulation. However, the EU understands that the transition may be difficult for operators, and therefore the regulation provides actually another regulation, which is regulation number 2020/2235, provides for a transition period of about 6 months, which will apply when a composite product is accompanied by the current certificate, so the certificate which is in force until the 20th of April 2021, which have left the country of origin and would arrive in the EU after the 21st of April. For such products, the regulation provides that they may enter into the EU during that 6 months period, so until the 20th of October 2021, with the quote-unquote old certificate. So you have a transition period of 6 months to get accustomed with the new rules. If we now turn to regulation number 2020/692, so this is a regulation which applies more specifically to the animal health requirements applicable to the composite product. We have a question about the risk mitigation treatments which need to be applied to the animal product. So, for instance, if we take a biscuit which contains cream and eggs, what risk mitigation treatment needs to be applied, and does it have to be applied to the biscuit or to the ingredients? Well, the answer can be found under that regulation, and actually the risk mitigation treatments should be applied to the animal products contained in the composite product. So not to the biscuits, but actually to the egg products and to the dairy products contained in that composite products. So we can provide an example of such risk mitigation treatments. So for instance, we have a treatment listed in the annex of that regulation, the relevant annex of that regulation, which would be, for instance, the purpose of that treatment would be to inactivate highly pathogenic avian influenza. So such a treatment applies to eggs. So is it necessary to use cream and eggs that have undergone risk mitigation treatments? Or is it sufficient to submit the biscuits to these treatments? No, the treatment has to be applied to the cream and to the eggs. So to enter into the EU, an attestation for the biscuit would be sufficient. The operator in that attestation declares that the biscuit contains dairy products and or egg products which have undergone a risk mitigation treatment at least equivalent to those listed under Annex 28 of Regulation number 2020/692. So basically, without such a risk mitigation treatment, the composite product as a whole is not allowed into the EU. So those risk mitigation treatments, which can be found in the annex of the regulation, are captured here on this slide. So you can see that tables are provided, and by reading the regulation, you can find out what treatment needs to be applied. So we thank you very much for your attention. We have had a brief overview of what will change from the 21st of April 2021. Certain questions, of course, are not particularly easy to answer, as you have seen, but the decision tree provided by the European Commission is most helpful. In case of doubts, you can request confirmation from a number of administrations, and we hope that you will now have a clearer picture of the new legal regime, and we thank you for your attention.
감사합니다. 안녕히 가세요.